Hey everybody, it is the January Wine of the Month Club. I'm back with my handsome bearded friend, Sam Doyle. He's been getting huge accolades. We have retired Brandon Warnicki. He's my best friend, but Sam's incredible education and banter that he has with me has caught the attention of so many of you, so we appreciate that feedback. And we came out the gate here in January. First of all, hope everybody had a great holiday. Happy New Year. And we're coming out with a bang this month. We're going with 4 bottles, which is usually above our normal of 3 or 2. So we're really excited about it. I'm personally very excited about the Pouilly Fussé. We'll get to in a minute, but 4 great wines, and we'll just get right into the show because you're busy and let's give you the education you deserve. So Sam, let's talk about the rosé that we're starting with here.
So the rosé is Almacercius Grand Reserve Guardian rosé coming from the Languedoc. Really small production here. I think overall the winery is kind of a co-op of a bunch of different winemakers, but each individual label is kind of very focused in small production. I think the drive of this wine for me is a couple things. One, the Languedoc is the largest wine growing region in all of France, which means there's a lot of bad wine, but the good wine is good. And the things that I focused on in the Languedoc are wines that are usually Rhone driven or Provence driven. And those I think are the 2 best things that they do. And this rosé specifically is made exactly in the Provence style, including the grapes themselves. You have Grenache, Cinsault, and then Syrah too. The other thing is in the 3 villages, the vineyards is specific.
It's 45 Cinsault, 45 Grenache, 10 Syrah.
Yeah.
For a little education at home, these are red wines.
Yep.
And the skins for the rosé. But I agree with you. It's funny. I think Languedoc is like influencer marketing. Stick with me here for everybody.
Hey,
Who may not be, yeah, I know. Influencer marketing today, where you pay influencers on Instagram or TikTok or what have you, you can grossly overpay and you can grossly underpay based on where that influencer is in their life cycle. I've always felt that Languedoc is the wine that makes me most think about that. You can buy a $13 Languedoc wine that really stinks. It's just like, I can think of tons of wines that are much better at 13. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, you can buy a $14 Languedoc wine that dismantles many $30 wines in France and other parts of the world. Agree?
And I think the big part with this was they specifically went to vineyards with very stony driven soils. And it's an oceanic kind of climate here. So lots of saltwater air.
It's good.
Minerality. And I mean, I chilled this down in a half hour in my freezer, and it is literally at the perfect temperature right now. It's delicious.
I think this is going to be a huge home run with a lot of you. And by the way, a lot of you are like, oh, rosé in the winter, great. I mean, outside of people who have very small apartments, I'm thrilled if you put this in your little wine cellar or down your basement or in the garage or in the fridge until April 19th if you feel more custom. I think rosé has become white wine and you drink it year round, but I know that people get more excited about drinking in the spring and summer, and this will easily hold up and be fresh and vibrant for you if you decide to do it for Memorial Day.
And I also want to bring up the fact that I'm still friends with a lot of my sommeliers in restaurants, and there's a push right now in the wine world of drinking rosé not as fresh as what the general public believes in, especially French rosés, because the acidity level is so high. And the fruit is so bright in the beginning that these Provence, Languedoc, Rhone style rosés are now being held for a little bit longer and being drank later, just because the more the minerality comes out. I had a really long conversation with Laura Mennick about that, last year, about how many rosés are being drank too young.
I couldn't agree more. Let's move on to the wine that highlights this pack for me by far, the wine that I've personally drank a good amount of already. This is the most consumed wine in the history of my wine club that I've had prior to unveiling it here. I fell in love with this wine the first time I had it a couple months ago. Let's get into this one.
So this is a Domaine de Trois Tilleuls Pouilly Fussé from Burgundy in France. So another small production. I think digging into Pouilly Fussé is kind of the educational drive on this wine. You have Burgundy, that's a north to south appellation, kind of almost pretty much linear in a way. And Pouilly Fussé is an AOP, which is basically a designated regulated area within the Mâconnais, which is in the southern part of Burgundy.
So for everybody, just to make it a little less nerdy, there's a certain amount of land that you're allowed when you plant Chardonnay, which this is a Chardonnay, to call it a Pouilly-Fuissé. And if it's, no different than crossing the border from New York to New Jersey, if you're outside of it, you may be in the Macon appellation or White Burgundy or whatever the producer decides. But Pouilly-Fuissé is held at a high level of prestige. And this is in general how wine is done around the world, when it's got different rules of what percentage of the wine has to be from that region to put it on the label. No different in California in America, where you see Napa Valley versus saying California. There's all those rules. Pouilly-Fuissé, what America has is it tells you the grape and where it's from. What confuses people about a lot of wines from around the world, specifically in Italy and France, you see a lot of confusion is, this is Chardonnay. I remember as a kid when I was starting to get educated, this is the 90s, most wine consumers were a little less educated than they are today. People would come in and say, I need a nice Chardonnay, Gary. I had started becoming very fond of Pouilly-Fuissé at that point in my life. This is even like when I was 21. And they're like, this is a great wine. They're like, and I was 21, I look 16. I look like AJ. So this will make sense to you, Sam. My brother AJ and Sam went to high school together. So that's the reference. At 21, I look 16, and I would say, hey, this is a great Pouilly-Fuissé. And they would say, hey, kid, I told you Chardonnay. And then, of course, those would be the fun moments for me. I'd be like, hey, undereducated wine customer, this is Chardonnay. So that's what Sam's referring to.
I also want to bring up the point, too. I mean, I feel like, California wines, when you really look at them, they are a transplant of French wines in general, like Cabernets and Chardonnays. And the California style, even though now it's become a little bit more oaked than Burgundy, is really based off Meursault, Pouilly-Fuissé, and these style wines have a little bit more broad shoulders than other Burgundy styles, and they use oak to kind of bring that down. Now in America, they definitely lifted that up and kind of took it through the roof, but you can definitely tell that there is some oak influence on the wine, and is kind of.
I agree. I'm tasting this, and this is the most. I tend to, for this show, I'll tend to drink room temperature because I think I can analyze it a little more. The bottles I've had of this have been slightly more chilled.
That might
and I think that, what's that? Yours chilled?
Mine's pretty chilled down. Yeah.
And what I like about that is it does show that expression of a little bit of oak. I think a lot of you that like California Chard, this is not Rombauer, popcorn and butter, but this is definitely a California-friendly white Burgundy that I think a lot of people will enjoy. Mm-hmm. Speaking of a lot of people enjoy, this is going to be a popular Tuesday. Talk about the wine that just pull this, like if you're watching now, pull the screw top off and pour this. Mm-hmm. It's a perfect weekday little entry level Pinot Noir from California.
Yeah, so this is Dalliance Pinot Noir. It's made by Shannon Ridge, which is a winery that, I know you're really familiar with. I'm really familiar with. We've been working with Shannon Ridge now. It's almost every year we have multiple SKUs from them that we go really in on. And the
Clay Shannon, one of the great farmers, Lake County, other places. Mm-hmm. The reason we do so much with them at Wine Library, and by the way, we worked with them on Empathy Wines, is he's producing higher quality grapes than what he's charging. Clay, don't listen. Don't raise the prices.
Yeah. So, this is a very typical, for me, California style Pinot Noir. Just very candied fruit, not overly influenced by any rustic note. This is still Northern California, so the alcohol level is actually decent on this wine.
I agree.
But they use a little bit, which was interesting to me, and I can tell when I taste it, they use a little bit of Petit Syrah to lift it a little bit, which just brings a little bit more mouthfeel. It doesn't really affect the wine too much. But the wine is just easy drinking, every night style Pinot Noir that I think people will think of like the really candied versions of the bigger names from California.
Yeah, to me, I just know a lot of you who are on this list are looking for house wine, company wine, client wine, party wine. And, look, it's hard to find Pinot under $20 that you can get excited about of this is a solid expression, well made. And I think, I didn't realize the Petit Syrah variable. So thanks for calling that out, Sam. But it makes a hell of a lot of sense because I do think there's why I wanted this wine in this month and why I thought it would hit with a lot of you is, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is like a $12 to $13, $14 wine, right?
Yeah, that's what we sell it for, yeah.
Yeah. So I just genuinely believe that kind of wine is valuable for real wine drinkers. Mm-hmm. Like if you're a real wine drinker and wine is what you have with dinner,
Sure.
Like, listen, you're going to need to find some wines that appease you for a Monday night, just a glass, because you're pissed off at the boss. And I think if you're a Pinot fan, which many have become, this is a better expression than, listen, there's some really underwhelming. I mean, I tasted a lot of Pinot grapes for, Empathy's second vintage, because we almost did a Pinot as the red instead of like a red blend. And, Pinot's gotten expensive because of supply and demand. It's hard to get a fun, solid. This is not going to change your life. This is not $100 Burgundy, but this is definitely a solid expression. I'm happy with it. And speaking of which, it's a good segue to the next wine as well.
Yeah. So the next one is the 2018 1895 collection Malbec from Bodega Norton. So, I mean, if there's going to be one wine in this lineup that people recognize at least the name, it's definitely going to be Bodega Norton. They're one of the most historic kind of wineries that really were one of the first people that started really expanding into international sales, which really drove Argentina's kind of reputation up over time. I mean, they've been making wine in Argentina for 400, 500 years. But no one heard about it until probably 20 years ago, maybe 30 if you're really going to with it. And you can thank people like, the Norton, Bodega Norton, Catena, all those kind of big names that come from that area really lifted it. And these guys are actually one of the oldest houses. Edmund Norton was a train engineer that came over. They were kind of building railroads, and he just kind of fell in love with the land and decided, hey, how can I get grapes? Someone offered him grapes, and he kind of started and ran with it.
This is really, again, to Sam's point, and kind of the theme that we wanted to do this month was get you some quaffer wines, some things that could really become established house wines for all of you. Thought that January is a good year to start, good month to start. Hey, here's 4 wines that are all excellent for their price point and could become the thing that either you reorder or pick up, and can find locally or whatever works for you, but could become house wine. This is a really good effort of Malbec. Norton, because it produces so much wine, to be very transparent, has been hit and miss for me through the years. There's been some efforts on the premium side that I've really liked. There's been a lot of efforts that I haven't even considered carrying in the store. But this 1895 kind of program has been really strong. And this is one of the better expressions. I think it has that. To me, this is a perfect cheeseburger wine. I just know that people are going to pair this with. And I thought it was really well made.
Yeah, I think it's just a very easy drinking style of Malbec. Again, I'm an old world guy, and after tasting it now, I mean, this is the first time I'm tasting it for real. First time I've tasted this wine. I know about the winery and everything.
Yep.
Right off the bat, I mean, it's 13.5. It's got that old world balance. It's not burning my mouth like a lot of Malbecs get from Argentina. And it's super lush with fruit and just really classic kind of.
It's chewy.
It's a flavor bomb.
It's a little chewy, which I like.
Yeah, for sure.
Sam, thank you so much for your expertise. You're bringing a lot of value to this show. Everybody, please let us know on social media or email us. Let us know how you like these wines, and we'll see you in February where we're cooking up something pretty exciting. Happy New Year again. We'll see you next month.